Philip Dodd is a cultural entrepreneur and public intellectual, as well as an award-winning broadcaster, writer, curator, and academic. His work has helped to reshape political, cultural, and educational agendas. Philip first became a truly public figure in 1997, when he was appointed director of the Institute of Contemporary Arts. When he took the job, the ICA had 250,000 visitors a year and a large financial deficit. When he left 7 years later, visitor numbers had trebled, there was a financial surplus, and the Institute had been transformed. The novelist J.G. Ballard wrote that Philip had made the ICA into an ideas lab for the 21st century. The commentator Yasmin Alibdai Brown said that he had made the ICA a thoroughfare for global culture. Philip introduced a writer-in-residence program with the then unknown Zadie Smith, as well as a scientist-in-residence program. He also helped develop an innovative postgraduate program for the ICA, Birkbeck College, and the Tate. At the same time, he became an honorary professor at King's College London, and there founded an MA program in creative industries, the first in the country. At the ICA, he also founded a networking agency known as The Club, which supported 500 of London's young creative businesses and curated exhibitions with architects such as Zaha Hadid and artists such as Yoko Ono. These accomplishments are a tribute to Philip's creative imagination, business acumen, and sheer stamina. Philip Dodd's editorial work includes the deputy editorship of the New Statesman and the editorship of Sight and Sound, which is the magazine of the British Film Institute. Stuart Hall, the influential academic and intellectual, declared that Philip had made the magazine essential reading. As a broadcaster, Philip is probably best known as a presenter of Nightwaves, Radio 3's flagship arts and ideas program, even though he also broadcasts regularly on Radio 4 and the World Service. The fertile combination of academics and artists on Nightwaves, knowledgeably chaired by Philip Dodd, has enlivened and sometimes enriched millions of homeward journeys over the past 12 years. An editorial in The Guardian praising the program spoke of Philip's reliably piquant questioning. Now, the common thread that links Sight and Sound and Nightwaves and the ICA is the interpenetration of the intellect and the imagination, or the academic and the creative. The origin of this creative tension that animates Philip's professional life lies here at Leicester, where he came as an MA student in our School of English and then worked as a lecturer in English for 13 years. Philip was a serious intellectual in our midst, and it was he who began to broaden our sense of what constituted English, as he had an interest in what would now be called cultural studies. Perhaps more importantly, it was here in Leicester that he began, in partnership with our colleague Professor Rob Calls, what has since become an important debate about national identity. They published a collection of essays called Englishness, Politics and Culture 1880 to 1920. The title sounds dryly academic, but when the history of this debate comes to be written, it is this book that will be seen as the fountainhead of current debates about national identity. Its readers included Alan Yentob, who was then head of music and arts at the BBC. He promptly hired Philip as his one-man think tank to help him reimagine what counted as the arts on the BBC. Philip developed program ideas, wrote scripts for documentaries, and acted as the consultant on the enormously influential Late Show, as well as on a 6-part global art series, Relative Values, Art and Value. The book of the series, which Philip co-authored, continues to feature on introductory courses on art. Philip Dodd returned to the theme of national identity in 1995 with an essay called The Battle Over Britain, which he wrote for the think tank Demos. In this pamphlet, he examined the complex notion of Britishness. Britain was an import-export culture with a port rather than a village green as its emblem. Tony Blair and New Labour took the message on board, and Philip's pamphlet contributed to the rebranding of Labour as Cool Britannia, an influential idea in Labour's first term in office, even if Philip is keen not to take responsibility for what the then government did with his idea. In recent decades, Philip's eye has increasingly been on China. This is not a case of jumping on a bandwagon, but rather, as in the case of the debate on national identity, of initiating what would prove to be an important new dimension of the UK's engagement abroad. In 1998, he took an ICA programme to China to accompany Tony Blair's first visit to that country. The next year, he hosted at the ICA Revolutionary Capitals, Beijing in London, which was an exhibition, film screenings, talks, and other events which showcased contemporary Chinese arts and culture for the first time in Britain. Philip subsequently left the ICA to found an agency called Made in China, which develops cultural and educational projects between China and the UK. This company has been immensely active, and through it, Philip shaped the first digital arts festival in China, co-founded the 2008 China Now Festival in the UK, devised the China strategy for the Hong Kong Art Fair, which is the largest in Asia, and acted as the creative consultant to the award-winning UK Pavilion at the 2010 World Expo in Shanghai. Many Chinese students come to British universities, including Leicester, and it is Philip's consultancy that has developed a networking club for Chinese students in Britain to connect them with Britain's creative businesses. It has generated enormous acclaim, not least from the government agency Creative England. Philip Dodd's work as a cultural entrepreneur and public intellectual are of lasting importance, and we are proud that this university exercised a formative influence on Philip's mind and that it provided a research environment that nurtured his thinking. Mr. Vice-Chancellor, on the authority of the Senate and of the Council, I present to you Philip Dodd that you may confer upon him the degree of Doctor of Letters.
To the degree of Doctor of Letters and welcome you among us again. Many congratulations.
It was a very kind speech by Professor Campbell, and of course, read backwards, it looks as if my life has been beautifully organised. It has been chaotic and random. And in that level, I stand before you as a model what not to do in life. But let me start before I say my few words, and I have 540 words because the BBC tells you can speak 180 words per minute, and I have 3 minutes. I just want to thank Leicester University for its kindness today and for the nurturing it gave me early in my career. I am precisely the person who never knew what he wanted to do. And what I did do was always choose what I didn't know and do it. So my research was in the 19th century, so my first lectureship was in 20th century literature. I then went to become deputy editor at the New Statesman when I couldn't even type. The journalists were horrified by me. I then went to work at the BBC with no experience in television. I then went to run the ICA, the Institute of Contemporary Arts, never having run an arts institution in my life. I then got involved in politics, never having belonged to a single party. And then I decided most willfully when I was 54 that the future lay in China. So without being able to speak any Chinese at all, I founded this company Made in China. So my one piece of wisdom is do what you don't know. Treasure what you can't do. It's very touching to be back here, partly because when I was here in the early 80s, Leicester University was a very English and, to be frank, largely white institution. So it's rather extraordinary and very moving, since I now spend a week a month in China, to find the world has entered Leicester University. It's part of the global highway, and I think that is extraordinarily important. It's extraordinarily important for several reasons, not least because the knowledge and experience different groups bring to this university is what gives it its value. The Vice-Chancellor inevitably spoke of the wonders of research, but actually it's the wonders of student collaboration that always strikes me as why universities are very valuable. This global institution will give you knowledge and connections and relationships that should last you for the rest of your life. I have a view that the world is moving east, that actually it may be that the Olympics is the last great event that London will ever host. I could, of course, be wrong in these apocalyptic meanderings, but it does strike me that it's critical, since the Vice-Chancellor spoke about employment. One thinks of the globe as an employment opportunity, and one goes towards that with real humility, always knowing what you don't know. If I could end on a personal note, my mother is here, and my mother's determination, I was brought up in a mining village, that I should not end up in the mines like most of my family, has partly brought me here. My mother knew what she didn't know, and actually that strikes me as the most important thing for any of us. Thank you very much.